Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Nikki Anthony, and I am the founder and ED for Little Hands Big Hearts, Little People Service Organization. And I'm super excited and a little bit late to present to you segment 4 of our Little Leaders Career Exploration Series. We have a wonderful lineup of women who are professionals in the area of STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These ladies are just doing a lot in their respective fields and growing into themselves as students. So I'm really excited about what we're going to be sharing tonight. Just shortly, we'll have them introduce themselves to you, and I want them to share just the myriad of their experiences, their accolades that they've accomplished over the last up to, I think, 20 something years for some of them. So I'm really excited. I want to share our mission statement for Little Hands Big Hearts, and that is the mission of Little Hands Big Hearts is to develop little people and not so little people into servant leaders who think beyond themselves for the greater good through explicit and intentional opportunities for character development, selfless service to others, and community-based volunteering. And we recently culminated a service project that started in February where we took bags filled with love, blankets, candy, fidgets, mental health tools to the local children's hospital, Wilson's Children's Hospital. And we had a really warm reception. Our bags were hand decorated by our graphic arts department. And so we were able to share love with the children who are being seen by Wilson Children's Hospital. So that's a little bit about what we do. Our heart is to develop the next generation of servant leaders. We want them to know the wealth of options that they have for careers. And so tonight we're focusing on STEM. With that, I would like for these ladies to introduce themselves to you. We'll start with Dr. Renee, we'll go with Zaria, then we'll go with soon to be Dr. Adrian, and then we'll go with Dr. Paula.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Renee Robinson. I am a scientist, more specifically a molecular biologist. I have a BSc in biochemistry, a master's in microbiology and immunology, and a PhD in biology. Not only am I a scientist, but I'm also a regulator. So I'm a scientific evaluator at Health Canada, and understanding this is more of an American audience, just to give you some context of what Health Canada is and what we do. So you guys know the US FDA, US Food and Drug Administration, that regulates different products that are important to the health and safety of Americans. So we're the Canadian equivalent. We're a federal government organization that is a part of the public health portfolio, and we regulate a plethora of different products. So everything from natural health products to pharmaceuticals to medical devices. And my role as a scientific evaluator, I wear many hats, but one of my main roles is, I have a research role. So I would design research projects and then analyze the data and then communicate the science to in writing. So for example, writing manuscripts that are going to be published or that are published in accredited scientific journals, or communicating orally. So like at conferences, for example, seminars, webinars. And not only do I have a research component, another aspect of my job, there are many aspects, but just to summarize, but another aspect of my job is the advice portion. So I'll advise the government, give the government scientific advice to help them regulate certain types of products so that they will be able to make science-based, evidence-based decisions with the Canadian health and safety at the forefront. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zaria Henderson. I am a junior computer science major with a concentration in cybersecurity here at South Carolina State University, and I am from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a part of many organizations here at South Carolina State, which one is NSBE, which is National Society of Black Engineers, as well as NAACP, which I currently serve as the Miss NAACP for the 2024-2025 school year here at South Carolina State.
Hi, I'm Adrienne from Springfield, Massachusetts, home of the Basketball Hall of Fame. And I have been working, so I'm a microbiologist. So I study little microbes, bacteria, and viruses that cause infectious diseases. And I started right after I graduated from college, and I worked in an HIV research lab. So I was studying the virus that causes AIDS. And while I worked there, I earned a master's degree in biotechnology with a concentration in biodefense. So I studied bacteria and viruses that can be used as weapons. And then I worked in a lab. Um, we would track outbreaks, or infectious disease outbreaks all around the world. So I was involved in the response to the Ebola outbreak. Was that 10 several years ago, anyways, 10 years ago, maybe. The Zika outbreak, hepatitis A, so a bunch of different viral outbreaks. And then I was involved in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic in December of 2019. I think we started, we had heard about the outbreak when it was abroad. And I was working in the lab when it was officially a pandemic. I was working in the lab studying the virus that causes COVID-19. And I was not satisfied with the response to address the racial disparities in the way that the virus was affecting different populations. And so I decided that I wanted to go back to school so I could lead my own research. And so in 2021, I went back to school. I am now a PhD candidate in molecular microbiology, and I am studying the bacteria that causes C. diff infections.
Wow, I'm taking notes here from everyone. It's really great to be here. And thank you, Dr. Erin, for inviting me, for all of us. My name is Dr. Paula Littlejohn, and I am I guess, third year postdoctoral research fellow at the University of British Columbia, BC Children's Research Hospital Institute. So I got my bachelor's degree in biobehavioral health from Penn State. So I grew up in the US. And did my master's in health sciences at Johns Hopkins with a concentration in maternal and child health, and then moved to Canada. Well, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry then for a decade on various clinical trials. And then after that, similar to Adrienne, wanted to actually do my own research and be able to control the type of research that I could do. So I decided to go back to school, and I completed a PhD in microbiology and immunology. And then after studying the gut microbiome, and malnutrition. And now I'm studying malnutrition with a disease known as inflammatory bowel disease, which affects both adults and children, but I'm specifically interested in children and how this condition affects children, and especially their nutritional status, and how can we better understand how the cells in the gut are working or not working, and how can we design better therapies, because this is a disease that has no cure presently. So happy to be here.
Wow. So I read the bios, a few of them beforehand, and just to hear it, spoken out loud, it's a lot to take in. So I'm like really honored. Thank y'all for sharing with us tonight. So we'll get started. As women in STEM, what were some of the hobbies that you all engaged in as children that contributed to you becoming scientists and then techies? Can I say techies? Sorry, without being offensive. Is that okay? Okay. So what were some of your hobbies? And we can start with Dr. Renee, and we'll go in the same order. Zaria, soon to be Dr. Adrienne, and then Dr. Paula.
So for me, my mom would always buy me science-themed toys when I was a kid. So she, for example, we played the Operation game. I don't know if everybody remembers that game, the Operation game. And then, she bought me a chemistry set and then a molecular model set. And then she dressed me up as either physician or scientist for Halloween. So naturally, I just gravitated towards an interest in science.
For me, there's not many hobbies that really led me here. It's really started when I took a web design class in high school, as well as when I came to college. And really joining organizations really like pushed me to want to be more in computer science and cybersecurity.
Same with me. It wasn't really a hobby that led me here. Actually, someone that was very close to me when I was 6 years old, someone that was very close to me died from complications due to AIDS. And so I had asked my dad, I'm like, well, what's AIDS? And he's like, I don't know, but I'm sure you can find a cure for it. And so he convinced me when I was 6 years old that I could find a cure for AIDS. And I really didn't know how to get there. I still haven't cured it, but I didn't know how to, the path that I should take. My mom, she is a retired registered nurse. And so I knew, well, she's in the health field. I want to be a nurse. And maybe that's how I can cure AIDS. And I was in this pageant as a young girl. I was in this pageant and we had to, write a speech and say what we wanted to be when we got older. And the person who's helping me write the speech I said I wanted to be a nurse like my mom. And the person who was helping me said, well, maybe you should say you want to be a doctor. It sounds better. And so she's the one who put that idea in that even maybe this is a possibility. Maybe I could be a doctor. I had never seen anybody who looked like me, who was a doctor. But she told me, and so so it was really people speaking into my life and telling me that these were possibilities, even though I never saw it. They were telling me that these were possibilities, and so I was just convinced that it was something that I could do.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I didn't necessarily have any hobbies. I'm still trying to find a hobby. But I think when I was playing with my toys, I always break them and try to fix them. So I was always playing that role and also teaching them. So I think at one point I thought I was going to be a professor because I was always, I had the most educated teddy bears and dolls in Jamaica because and the plants. I taught the plants. My sister thought we were insane. And so I think it was more of that. And, similarly, it was a one experience was when I was a sickly child. We just get sick all the time. And I remember my uncle coming to Jamaica and he had given me this little Bayer pill bottle, probably some aspirin or something. And I remember I held on to that little box for a very long time. And I think that was kind of my first interest in I want to do something health related because I was like, wow, if this little box of these little tiny pills can make me feel better, I want to be a part of doing that for other kids.
I love that. So I heard a theme. It sounds like I heard a theme of representation, but also someone speaking life into you and saying I think you can do this, or someone kind of pushing you in that direction. How would you encourage parents who have little people or not so little people that, they're showing proclivities towards things, but they're unsure? What would you encourage them to do to kind of help their kids explore different career paths in STEM? And we can start with you, Dr. Paula, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah. I think, it goes back to even what Dr. Renee said, just having some of those toys and it's exposure. Mm-hmm. Exposure is a really big deal. And I think for probably many of us can, not representation and not being able to see people that look like us. I think the first PhD person I met I was already in university before I'd even see anybody that looked like me. When I was growing up in Jamaica, I saw Black doctors and stuff like that. But when I moved to the US, that was just a void there. So I think just exposing them to different opportunities like this, coming and hearing and seeing, because once they start seeing people who look like them in these roles, then it does become believable. It becomes achievable now, and it's not so far off. Finding opportunities, going to the museum, exposing them to stuff, find the people who know, and there are some people who knows, and there's just some of us who don't. Find some of those knows and where they know stuff and get onto the list of the knows so you can get your kids in front of those in those opportunities, because sometimes a lot of them are free. Not everything costs, and sometimes it could be sponsorship. And then, don't be afraid to, if they have an opportunity to go abroad, let them go abroad and, get more exposure, especially in Europe. I think there's just a lot of research that is there and the way that they do and view research. So I think just keep on exposing them to things. And there's so much now out there, YouTube, Instagram, not the foolish stuff, but get them in front of stuff. And I think that's what's going to really help.
And I think as well, also, platforming prominent scientists that look like us in their homes, like talking to them about, some of these prominent scientists. For example, the first African-American woman, in space was an engineer and a physician, Dr. Macy Jemison, and also Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, who led the development of the Moderna vaccine. So talking to them about these prominent figures, these prominent Black figures, and we're all women, so prominent Black women figures, to help them see that this is a possibility for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just add to listen to what they're saying and to take them seriously, because so for just listening to what they're saying. So for example, during the pandemic, I'm studying the virus that causes COVID-19. So I was explaining it to my kids, just telling them, and they were little, 2 and 4, I think, at the time. And but I was just explaining it to them, and I didn't even think that they were like paying attention. So one day we go to Dollar Tree, and there was this ball there, and it was a green ball, and it had like little spikes on it. And so my daughter sees it, and she was like, is this the coronavirus? And I'm like, oh my goodness, how did you even, make that connection? But, after that, I bought every science kit and everything that I could, to like develop that. I put them in science club for girls and everything that I could. Cause, just that one thing, she showed interest. And I was like, let me, build on that. And, on the flip side, my other child said they wanted to be a gorilla when they grew up. And I took that seriously too. I tried to look for a circus, school and everything, because whatever they say that they're interested in, you never know where it's going to go. So you just try to build on it.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of piggyback off what everybody said, I would definitely say just to like see how engaged they are within the STEM field, as well as their eagerness within the STEM field. That'll definitely show a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I also heard this theme of, it sounded like activism, that you saw a problem and you wanted to be a part of the solution. So can you all talk about just how your work and your studies have taken you in the realm of activism, and who are you supporting, and maybe your why behind that? Does that drive your career? And Dr. Paula, you can get started. I think you were the last person, and we can go with Dr. Adrienne, Zaria, and then Dr. Renee.
Yeah, for sure. I think, it's hard to be a Black woman in STEM and not be an activist, right? Because there's so much pressure to squeeze us out, and so much pressure for us to always consistently prove ourselves. And so I'm a part of the Black Microbiology Association, which Adrienne is also part of. I'm part of the Canadian Black Science Network, part of different groups just to really trying to get out there and to help promote Blackness. When I was at UBC, I remember when I was doing my PhD, and I was TAing a class, and I was walking down the hallway, just waiting for the class before my class to finish. And I was looking at all the posters, not posters, but the pictures of all the graduating classes. And I was looking back, years going back and back and back. And I was like, there are no Black and brown people on this list. And can't be. Like, this is like over a decade now spanning of people graduating. And so for me, that was just like, that's a problem. And so if it's a problem, then it needs, we need to find a solution. And so at this time, the Black Caucus was being formed at UBC. And I reached out to the leadership and said, hey, we need to have a conversation, because I'm not seeing anybody that looks like me coming through my department, and in the undergrad at least. And I want to change it. And so what ended up happening is that we did a 7-part speaker series, and we invited speakers from across Canada and even some from the US. And we had over 1,000 people registered. And then we're able to create a paper that we then gave to the provost office to be like, okay, these are the action that you need to take in order to increase representation at UBC. And so it is just, it's a part of giving back. It's a part of creating space, because for me, it's sort of like, oh, there's not enough seat at the table. Well, then we need to build a bigger table, build your own chair, whatever it is. If we need to stand in the corner, as long as we're in the room. And that's kind of the approach that I take. And so I'm involved in mentorship whenever there's an opportunity for, especially high school, science, anything, I show up. Also because I think a lot of the students that in the area where I am has never seen a Black scientist. And so I want to show up so I can break some of the stereotypes of what they're thinking about Black people being in these roles. And that's just important to me and something that I continue to do and will continue to do until I finish on this earth.
That is so good. I love, love, love it. So representation, definitely. And breaking the stereotypes. So it's almost like we have several different fights going on at the same time. You know, you have some in your community, you have, you know, racism, you have all these different isms that you have to fight and in an already underrepresented field, right? So I love it. Adrienne, soon to be Dr. Adrienne.
Yeah, I'll just add, because everything that she said, but I'll just add that I feel like the COVID-19 pandemic just like opened my eyes, because I was like always a part of this like cutting edge research. And during the pandemic, my, family, friends, people that I knew, people who looked like me, they were being negatively impacted, so disproportionately burdened with by COVID-19. And it was like we were invisible. And so, I'm in the lab, and I was like, there's no way that I can be a part of this research and not speak up for my people, and we're the ones who were like being impacted the most, and the most negatively. And so I had like written this essay a couple years ago, but I described it as like hiding my Black identity behind a white lab coat, because in the lab, I'm like always the only one. And I always felt, I've been told so many times, like, oh, you're not like the rest of them, as if there's like some special quality about me that, that's the reason that I deserve to be in the lab doing this cutting edge research, instead of, just being a regular Black person who happens to love science. And, I'm capable, like many others, of doing this work. And so during the pandemic, I spoke up, and I like pointed out what was described as blind spots, the areas of research that we should have like started that no one else even thought about. And so I'm listening to Dr. Littlejohn talk about IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, and of course I'm studying C. diff infection, and people with IBD, they're like at high risk for developing this infection. And that's what you hear. You hear a lot about this infection, and but of course a lot of people who take certain antibiotics, they are also at high risk for developing this infection. And so I immediately noticed there are racial disparities in the risk for this, not for the risk of the infection, because Black people are less likely to have this infection. But when we do have it, we are most likely to get sicker and die from it. And so I'm saying, so nobody else thinks anything about this, like, and I think it's like 60% of C. diff infections are associated with antibiotic use. So I said, well, are there any racial disparities in like the prescription of antibiotics? Sure enough, there are. So these antibiotics that are associated with high risk for severe infection and death, they're prescribed more to Black people. But nobody else even thought of that, like to make that connection, because maybe no one else cared. And so I think just being who I am, and like, because I know my family and friends are going to be affected by it, it makes me care about it. And so just by default, I've been involved in like activism, but it was more just because I just cared about my community and my family and friends, and I just wanted to be able to help, and especially to be able to use my science to help.
coming from like a student's perspective, I would definitely say seeing us Black students actually graduate and going out into these fields is a really great thing because now you don't really see it much. So just seeing like us putting it out there more is really great because not only is it making a change, but it's inspiring the generations behind us to come up and do those bigger things and change any issues that are going on now. Like we could be changing some issues now, but they might have way bigger ideas and could come change those. So I just definitely say
So for me, I do, mentorship. So my alma mater, Carleton University, they have a mentorship program. So I would mentor, university students wanting to have informational sessions with, someone in my position to see how their career trajectory can model mine. But not only that, being a part of, networking groups like the Dr. Paula had mentioned the Canadian Black Scientists Networking, that group. I'm a part of that as well, along with the Black Healthcare Professionals, Canadian Black Healthcare Professionals Network. So just being a part of those groups, giving people like myself an opportunity to network with each other and also mentor the next generation of scientists that are coming up.
So you bring up another good point. Thank you, Dr. Renee. What's the importance or how important is it for you to have community in STEM as a minority? So a double minority, being a Black person, then being a Black woman in STEM. How important do you feel it is for maybe children who grow up to go in that direction, for them to learn how to find community, for them to learn how to find mentorship, for them to learn how to connect with people who are in the field? And we can go backwards. So Dr. Renee, Zaria, Dr. Adrian, and Dr. Paula.
So I think it's very important. I think that, especially students, seeing people that look like them, have something to aspire to be. It's very, very important. So yeah, community is important.
I agree. It's definitely important. Really, yeah, students are so young, but we're the next big thing. So it's definitely very important because we're learning off of the older generations as well as the younger generation is learning from the generation right now. So it's definitely very important.
I completely agree. And I'll just add that I think it's important to seek out community because you might be the only one or one of very few, but still seek out people. They might not go to the same school as you or work in the same lab as you or wherever you work, but because I'm gonna be contacting Dr. Littlejohn as soon as we're done with this. So just seek out community and don't be discouraged if you don't immediately find it.
Yeah, no, community is really important. During COVID was when I first started really looking for community. I remember I met this young lady. She was running this group called Black Graduate Students or something like that. And then this other group called STEM Noir. And they had a session on Zoom. And I remember going on into the session and there was like 60 Black women on there. So some from PhD students all the way up to like professors. And I was like, oh my God, so many of us. And I was just blown away. And I mean, the whole thing turned to be so many things. We were crying, we were sharing, all of our stuff. I mean, at one point they were like, they wanted me to play the organ because I had an organ in my kitchen. And it was just like, it just turned out to be this fabulous moment. And from then I started looking like, okay, I need to find like my affinity group. And that same young lady, she ended up tweeting out, sending a tweet out to say, hey, are there any Black microbiologists? And then the Black Microbiologist Association responded was like, yes, we're here. And that's when, because of the whole incident that happened with that guy with the person in New York, the Black birder, and all these Black in groups started forming. So it was Black in chemistry, Black in micro, Black in computer science. And so I joined that group and we created a website called Black in X. And So all the group could just be listed. And that's when I started finding all the community, and even just like, therapy for Black girls. And so like this, to kind of make it more comprehensive, that's not just about science. I also need like therapy, because you're going through all this racial trauma and we're going through it collectively. And so to having people to talk to, and that was really nice to just have that, like, oh, there's just therapy just for Black girls that just understand what Black women are going through. And then we can just talk about it and talk about the real. And it'd be like, the look that we give each other when you're in a room, like, okay, I'm not crazy. So we're speaking the same language. And so finding those affinity groups, I think, is really important, because it really gives you a space where you can feel like, that was probably the first time I felt even validated as a scientist. And even on Clubhouse, I don't know how many of you, that's how Dr. Renee and I met Clubhouse. And it was a great space to just be like, wow, I am interacting with, Black doctors and Black scientists and all these things. And so community matters, and it can be online. It doesn't have to be in person, but you need them, because you need the stuff that you're going through. Sometimes you start, gaslighting yourself. And you need to have that group to be like, no, you're not crazy. What you saw was for real. And then this is how I've walked through it. This is how you can respond. This is how you can deal with it. This is how you can navigate it and come out with your mental health intact. And so, yeah, there's a lot of resources now, I think, than more than years before, because of what happened during COVID. That's when it really kind of got together. So I really encourage people to go and search for these groups, follow them on YouTube, listen to their videos, connect with them. Some of them have written books, and just really like follow people and connect with them. This is really important.
I love it. So you bring up another theme. I think we're all off our questions, but we're just gonna go with it because it's getting really, really good. So you all are inspiring me. I wanted to be a lot of different things, but one of the things I wanted to be was a marine biologist. I love, 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 love marine biology. And I just knew I was going to go in that direction. And I don't know what changed. I went international studies, special education, leadership. None of my degrees match, but I'm using them all at the same time. Some kind of how. Where there's a will, there's a way. But I want you all to encourage parents who have children of color that want to go in the direction of STEM in the way of resilience. What level of resilience, and I don't know if it can be level, but how would you encourage parents to build their children up in the way of resilience, going into a field that is underrepresented by people of color, especially Black people?
I think I would like to start this out, because this is a big thing for me. One of the things I think for me I had to realize is how to fail forward, and to not view failure as an identity thing. Sometimes when we fail at something, we take that on as it's, oh, I am a failure. No, I just didn't do that. The other thing I had to teach myself, and I teach this to my kids all the time, is that knowledge is fluid and the brain is very plastic. Meaning, if you don't know something today, it doesn't mean you can't know it 15 minutes from now, and doesn't mean that you can't be an expert at it in like a year from now. And so sometimes I think people are afraid of these 3 words, I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with those words. I don't know. But just because you say I don't know doesn't mean that I am stupid or I'm incompetent. It just means that I don't know that information. I don't know the literature. Even if you want to phrase it differently, I am not familiar with the literature around that specific topic. You can say it like that. So make it sound very sophisticated. But, if you don't want to say I don't know because it makes you feel some kind of way. But it's just that you can learn it later. And that was one of the things in my PhD. I think people tried to make me feel like, oh, because you didn't know something, you were stupid. And then I would come back and then I would be like, I would study everything. And then I would know like 10 times more. And then they were just like, And then I would find out they didn't even look it up. They were just assuming knowledge. They didn't even know it. And so I think it's just really important to, yes, you're going to need resilience. Don't be afraid of failure. Learn how to fail forward, and pick yourself up. And then you always got to keep moving forward. Like, build on every mistake, build on every failure. Be a person of integrity. Don't hide your mistakes, because that's when you really get into trouble. So you need all of those things, not just resilience. So people don't talk about this failure that you do, like, have integrity. If you fail at something, don't cover it up, don't hide it. Be open, but like, hey, listen, to go to your supervisor, I messed up real big. I just had to deal with my supervisor last week. I was like, oh my God, I messed up something real big. I thought it was real big. And I told him, and he was just like, okay, and just moved on. I'm like, bruh, I was stressing for like, 5 hours at least. He's just like, so, And sometimes I think we just, because for us, the bar against us, everything against us is so strong and thick that when you do make a mistake, so you feel like you don't know anything, you have to work your way mentally through so many things. Like you have to work through not only what you're feeling, but also what's being perceived. How are people perceiving you because you're Black and you're a female? So you just have all these layers, and you just have to recognize that you have those layers, and then definitely have a mentor. If you don't have a mentor and therapy, like, you're really not gonna make it. So you really need to have those things to really push through.
I love that. I came across a video, and then Adrian, you can go next. I came across a video of the Pivot podcast, and President Obama was one of the speakers. He was the guest speaker, and he made a statement basically saying, don't let people make you think that they're all that sitting at the table. Like, you deserve to be at the table also. And a lot of people come in and they might talk big, but once you start listening to the conversation, once you really spend time around them, you realize I deserve to be here, because they don't even know what they're talking about, right? And that's something I have had to learn to come out of imposter syndrome. Like, you have done the work, you are proven, you have a history in doing the things that you do. Show up, take up space. Whoever don't like it, they'll be okay. And that's that, And so I'm learning more and more, you deserve to be here. You've done the work. My dad often encourages me, girl, you've done the work. You've been doing this. What are you nervous about? So I'm just learning how to settle in myself. Like, no, I deserve to be here. And that's when I show up with that confidence, you'll see their whole persona change, because they can't come at you based on your lack of confidence, or definitely not the lack of knowledge. They have to approach you in a different way. So definitely everything that Dr. Paula said. We'll go with Adrian and Zaria, then Dr. Renee.
I couldn't agree more. I think we're most resilient when we are authentic and we're proud of who we are. That's really all you can do. Just be yourself and be proud of who you are. So two things. One, I remember I was working in a lab. This is years ago now. I was working in the lab, and there was a person there, and they were applying to medical school, and they were neither Black, they weren't a person of color, and they were not a female. So I'll just say it like that. And they said, I wish that I was you, because I'm applying to medical school. It's so competitive, and I wish I was you. Because, you're a Black female, they're going to let you in, but it's so competitive for me. And I remember going to my mentor. I mean, I didn't even know how to respond. I was so upset, though. And I went to my mentor, and he had taught me. He said, I'm going to teach you everything that I know. This is like, a couple of years before that. He said, I'm going to teach you everything I know, but you have to read a scientific article of interest every single day. You have to read and learn every single day. You need to know, like, in your sleep, exactly the science behind everything that you're doing in the lab. That's the only way that you're going to get ahead. So he had already told me this. So I went to him, told him what this person said. And he said, well, I mean, and I was in a master's degree at that time. He said, I mean, if you want to just print off your transcript and show them, you can, because, I was performing well in the program. He said, you could just do that. He said, but you don't owe them anything. So you don't owe them any explanation. Just, stay focused and keep doing what you're doing. And I didn't respond. I never did, because like my mentor said, I did not have to. And if and when I was going to graduate, on to a further school, I knew that I had earned that spot. I deserved to be there. And so that brings me to when I was applying to PhD programs. Most of the time people, they prepare for like at least a year. They have their whole list where they're going to apply, and they have their personal statements and everything like that written. And I mean, it was just like something that I thought of like in like maybe like August, and the application deadline is like December. And I just like one day in August, I think it was August, said like, I think I'm gonna apply, just like that, like I felt led. I'll say it like that. I want to be like over, but anyways, I just felt like I should apply. And I only applied to 2 programs. I asked whoever I needed to ask for recommendation letters. And I remember after I submitted my application, I started doubting myself. And the people that I went to, they're like, oh yeah, and these are people who are like senior to me. They weren't mentors though. So you always have to be careful who you talk to, because not everybody can give you that support that you need. But so I'm talking to them and they're like, oh yeah, you should have applied to more programs. You should have asked this person instead of that person for the recommendation letter. You did everything. And they're like, don't worry about it. We'll have you set for the next application cycle. So they had already told me that I failed before anything, sure enough, I don't know, it was maybe a week later, I got an acceptance. I got accepted. After I had done everything wrong, I still got accepted. But you know what? I was on my path. I didn't pay attention to anybody else. I was on my path, and I did things the way that I believed I should do them. And now I'm almost finished with this PhD program, and I'll be the first person in my family. But I can only be me. I can only be myself. So that's a long way of saying I feel like you could be the most resilient when you are just authentic and you're yourself, and don't worry about what anybody else has to say or think.
That is so good. Thank you for sharing that story. So you do, right? Don't let people define that. I have a very similar story to yours, Dr. Adrienne, in that our very first segment in 2020 for this career series was with educators. And I think one had graduated, and there were like two more that were on the panel. And I was like, just listening to them talk, and I was like, I think I could do this. And that was in September. By October, I had looked up some schools. I found one that I wrote down all my non-negotiables. I will not be in school past this time. I will not invest this much past this amount. I had all my non-negotiables, and this one particular school was the only one that met my requirements. And I sat there and I was like, okay, I'll just go through the process and we'll see what happens, whatever. Que sera, sera. But just like you, I was like led to do it, and then I got my acceptance letter. And it was probably maybe a month and a half turnaround in between initially wondering if I wanted to do it and getting the acceptance letter. So fail forward, like Dr. Paula said, even if it wasn't, that wouldn't have stopped me from going this direction, because I know it's something that I did want to do after a certain point. So I love that. All right, Zaria.
One thing about resilience, something that I was told many times, I heard from many people, is that delay is not denial. So with me hearing that, like if something doesn't go right, I just say it as, okay, maybe there's a better opportunity, or God's timing, or just many different things. And it's just like, I just keep going, because I can't let this one thing stop me and hold me back. So I definitely say to always remember is that delay is never denial.
So my PhD supervisor told me that a PhD is more of a character building exercise than anything. So, and that, I've held that to be very true. I've experienced that myself. It's extremely true. So, the traits that you need to be a PhD scientist, resilience. You have to have a you have to have a spirit of perseverance. You have to be tenacious. You know what I mean? Because even the scientific process, when you're doing your experiment, rarely does an experiment work correctly the first time, right? So as scientists, we know we have this term called troubleshoots. We have to troubleshoot our experiment. I remember when, my first year of my PhD, I was troubleshooting an experiment for 8 months. So, having that spirit of perseverance, to not give up, having that tenacious spirit is something that you need to have, those traits you need to have, that you could, instill in your child if they want to, go into a career in science.
Love it. So I want to go with character. What character traits are required for you to be successful? We've heard already truthfulness and honesty, integrity, being able to say I made a mistake, which just like Dr. Renee just said, is a part of science. The scientific method is not going to work the first time. So then you go back and try again and you write down your results. And if those don't work, at least you know what you're not supposed to do, right? So what other character traits do you think are important for people in the field of STEM?
So I can go first. So one thing a lot of people skip over, they normally talk about the soft skills. So I'm going to talk about a little bit more about the hard skills, or I guess you could call it the hard skills. So you have to love to read, right? Being a scientific research, you're always reading. That's how we communicate to the larger scientific audience and even the general public, right? We'll write manuscripts. We'll have to learn. You have to love to read and write, because you write manuscripts that's published. But then, even when you're starting your experiment, you have a biological question, right? So, how you develop that biological question is to read the literature. What are the gaps in the literature? Then you'll come up with a biological question. Then you work out how you're going to answer that biological question. What are the methods? And you're going to read to see what methods that other researchers have done, see if it's applicable to what you're going to do. And then you go on and do your experiment. And then eventually you write up your dissertation or your manuscript, and then you publish. So reading, you have to learn to love to read. In scientific literature, it's not the easiest read. It's not like, sometimes it's not like, it's not a bedtime read, because it is really, sometimes it can be long and arduous, but you have to kind of get your mind around loving to read that type of stuff. When I was in grad school, I remember, it was actually when I was in my master's, my first stint at doing grad school, there was a guy that I was doing my master's with, and he said he just loves to read. He just loves to read scientific literature. He does it for fun, and he'd read at least one paper a day. And I was like, but you have to have that kind of attitude towards your work. Also, loving what you're doing, like having a curious spirit. As scientists, we're curious. We want to explain scientific and natural phenomena that's never been explained before. So if you look in your child and you see that your child has this desire to understand and explain things at a deeper level, because they have that curious spirit, that is something that a trait that is beneficial. Also, being hardworking. These are not easy fields. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not an easy field. It's very technical. It takes a lot of, your mind and a lot of mind work. And you have to work really, really hard at what you're doing. So being hardworking. I think I covered most of it. Being tenacious, hardworking, loving to read, and loving to communicate, right? As a scientist, or learning to communicate. You may not have to love it, but we have to communicate, because how impactful is your work if no one hears about it, right? So communicating through writing manuscripts and publishing them in accredited scientific journals, communicating through, giving talks at, seminars, webinars, conferences, so that other people in the scientific community and the broader audience at large can hear about your work.
I would say good problem solving skills, great work ethic, and great memory, because being a computer science major, when taking programming classes and having to solve code, you'll definitely need to remember those codes. So those are the three things I would really, really say.
I agree with everything that Dr. Renee and Zaria said, and Zaria, I'm gonna have to call you after, because I'm learning to code. Oh my goodness! So, but anyways, I agree. I think it's most important that if you notice that your child is curious, if they're asking questions about things around them, I think that's what I would focus on most, because pretty much everything else can be taught. When I started working in the lab, I had applied to so many different places to work in the lab, and everybody wanted some kind of experience, and I didn't have any experience when I was applying. And they wanted you to pretty much come already trained, and the first person that I worked for, Dr. Todd Allen, he didn't care, and actually he just passed away a few months ago, but he didn't care. He didn't care that I didn't have any experience. He brought me on, And between him and my mentor, they taught me everything that I needed to know. And so it was hard because when I left that lab, I was comparing them to, you know, everything. And I started as a technician, which is not, I was not like a, they don't consider me like a scientist, but they trained me as a scientist. So I was designing people's experiments and, you know, everything. I was training PhD students, you know, and everything. So, but that's the way they, you know, that I was trained. And so I was going, you know, when I worked at another lab and I'm like, y'all don't do this here. You know, you don't know how to do this, you know, because I was trained like that. But I just say that to say, I came with no experience at all. I was wondering how, you know, how can I cure AIDS? That was it. I came with that one question and they taught me everything. But you do have to be willing to learn. So I would say be curious and be willing to learn, but you know, you can be taught.
You know, Dr. Renee and Adrian, you mentioned something that made me think about something else about for kids that they're curious. And I think given the space to listen. So my husband does this thing with the kids, which I was just like, oh my God. But whenever they would come home from school, he would give them like an hour to just like unload everything. And he always wanted to be like, he wanted to be the first person that they see when they get off the bus, because he wanted to hear about the first experience that they had for the day. It's going to be fresh on their minds. And he wanted to hear that. And so, and he did it with our oldest. I remember our oldest would just come and he could talk and he would just like follow him around. And then he just let him do that for like an hour. And then he'd be like, okay, now it's time to stop. And so I think that's, you know, letting your kids, you know, in part of their curiosity. And I think Adrian, you and Dr. Renee mentioned this, like when they're curious, you also have to like give space for that curiosity. So you can't shut it down. You have to have some space and some capacity to just hear them out. Let them say something, let them ask questions. You know, my youngest, like if you are going to tell him something, you better come with like it has to be like a policy book with everything in there, because he's going to find a loophole and be like, why did you not do this? And so I have to sometimes, you know, I want to be like, I'm Charlie Brown you, but I have to just kind of, okay, this is how he is. And, you know, I'm trying to train him up to be this curious person. And so I have to allow the space. And so that's all I want to add. But I think everything that everyone says, all the qualities is just great. I think the only one other thing I would add to that is also being creative. I think sometimes we think, oh, scientists just, you shut your creative side off and leave it at the door. No, you have to be very creative. You know, when you design your experiments, when you are putting together your artwork to represent your science, you definitely need some creativity skills there as well.
I love it. So I want to go back to Dr. Renee already kind of hit on it, but the power of communication, written communication in the age of, I call it text talk, where kids literally verbally speak the way that they text in text message. And, you know, being academic, being, you know, in an educational setting, those things don't work. You know, you have to use punctuation, you have to elaborate, you have to use data, you got to analyze data, you got to do all these things. So how would you encourage maybe people who the children, they don't like to write, or they don't have to write. Now we have dictation and all kinds of supports. Zaria can talk about those if you like, but we have Google and all these different avenues. So how would you encourage parents who have children that may not enjoy ELA, English language arts, you know, and communication in a traditional sense in this age of technology, but communication is still very, very necessary. So what advice would you give them?
So I guess I can go first. I would say there's a time and place for everything. When you're talking to your friends, you could use African American vernacular or shorthand, right? But when you're in a more professional environment, you have to be more scholarly in your words. I remember in my grad studies, somebody had, the professor was describing something, and I think someone had said something, but it wasn't the proper way of wording it. And he was like, let's be more scholarly in the way that we describe things. So you have to be more scholarly in the way that you describe things. And in order to be a scientist, there is no ifs, ands about it. You have to know how to communicate in writing. So scientific writing is something that you're going to have to learn how to do. So if the kids don't like to do it, I don't know how else to, have the parents encourage them, but eventually maybe they'll learn to love it because that is how we do communicate to the larger scientific audience and even, the public. And then communicating orally, giving talks. We give so many, like this past year, I've given so many seminars at different conferences. So public speaking is something that, you need to have. So encouraging your kids. Actually, my mom, I think she's watching this, even I'm more seasoned as a scientist now, this past fall, she actually signed me up for a public speaking, course to help me get rid of my filler words, to help me be more effective as a communicator. So, even though I am in my late 30s, I do have, my mom is still there encouraging me. I'm still her baby, right? So she's still there encouraging me and signing me up for things. And she's noticing if I have certain gaps here and I need to shore up certain gaps to be more successful. So she'll encourage me to do certain things. But not only, I don't only want to talk about my experience as communicating as a scientist, I'm also a regulator, right? So when you're communicating as a regulator, it goes a little bit beyond that, because we communicate to different audiences. So not just only subject matter experts in the sciences, internally we communicate to internal program partners, or we brief up to senior executives in our organization or senior ministers. And then on the flip side, when we are, communicating to externally, we are regulators, so we regulate an industry. So we have to communicate to industry or communicate to other government or organizations of other jurisdictions. So there's a way, like your message is still the same, but not learning how to pivot your communication style depending on who you are communicating to, right? So when you're communicating to scientists, you communicate, you use more granular details, because scientists are more interested in the methodology, what reagents did you use, what reaction conditions did you use. But when you're communicating to senior members of your organization, they're more interested in how does this research affect policy. And even the general public, they're more interested in how does this research affect my life. So, not only communicating, but knowing your audience and knowing how to pivot your communication style depending on who you're talking to. These are skills that you're going to have to know how to do if you want to become a scientific regulator like myself. So, parents can keep that in mind when they're encouraging their children in this to follow a career path, like similar to mine.
Yeah, I wanted to even add to what Dr. Renee was saying about there's a time and place for everything and how you communicate. And one of the things, I don't believe in code switching. At the same time, because I don't, it's just, no, you're not going to find me doing that. At the same time, for me, I'm like, I don't bring all of me to work, because that's not your business. Like, you don't need all of Paula where Paula is. Like, when I'm home, I'm a clown with my kids, but I don't know you like that, and that's not what I'm here to do. So I don't bring all of that, but I'm not going to take on the extra step to code switch to make you feel more comfortable. So I'm still in my space, my identity, and I bring that, but I know that there's a context. And I think for kids, one of the things that we do with our kids is that we have media limitations. So our kids cannot touch their device during the week. You're only allowed on the weekends. And people all the time ask me, like, how do you do that? I pay the bills. So until you're buying the stuff yourself and paying the bills, and you can do what you want. But as long as you're living here, then that's our rules. And the other thing is we do is for sometimes our kids are so excited they want to say stuff, and they just kind of like chop up all the words and all the stuff. And we're like, nope, we'll just stop them mid-sentence. We really want to hear what you have to say, but you need to say it in a way that I can understand. And so we will tell them to rephrase it, slow it down, and put it back. And I think, and that's also training them how to just communicate to other people. That is just like, so you started, this is like in the kitchen. This is in the house, this isn't like we're in the vehicle when we're driving here and there, that we'll just stop them. No, you got to say it. And mommy and daddy really want to hear what you have to say, but we can't understand you right now because you're chewing up all the words or you're not saying it. I tell my daughter all the time, she's in university now, and I tell her, I said, the way that you guys kind of talk, that tech stuff, I said, do not write an email like that. And I tell her all the time, send it to me first and let me edit it, and then I will send it back to you. And so me and my husband, like during, before she started university, we started training her on how to write properly, because she was now filling out scholarship application. So it is something that you have to consistently work on with your children, and let them know that, yes, like Dr. Renee said, there's a place and time where you text your friends and you do a certain kind of way, but you have to recognize that you cannot do that with an email. You cannot send your supervisor like, yo, what's up? You know, and the respect, like for me, like I have some people like, you know, technician in my lab, and the supervisor had emailed her and it was 3 days she hadn't responded. And I said, what kind of world? And I'm like, wow, you're a different type, because if that's my supervisor, you are getting a response within 24 hours. And so it's that even those kind of, you know, nuances and how to even be a professional, you really have to start training people now, because it's not like when probably most of us are growing up where it was kind of embedded in, you know, society and school and all those things. It's missing now because everything is so instant. And so we really do as a parent have to take on that role of actually not assuming that they're learning this stuff and actually make it a part of your lifestyle and your household contribution.
Okay, so with me, I still always send, before I send an email to any faculty and staff here at my school, I always send it to my mom to let her proofread it, because you never know, like social media can take a big role in communication nowadays, definitely. So for parents now with young children, I would definitely say yeah, I would just definitely say really get them more into like educational, not always educational, because young kids can lose interest in that, but really educational to help them more with communication. If they're good at really switching it from like to a higher level to then like, as they would call it, slang, then they're just good at it. Because really slang nowadays, like you never know who you're talking to or who's listening, so you definitely really want to have like a scholarly higher up communication skills. So I definitely say really watch what the internet is doing and always get somebody to proofread or read over whatever you're sending.
I love it. Also, get things like Grammarly, different tools. You know, if you sometimes the parents may not be the best with language, and that's no slight. Like we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, but use the tools that are available to you. Our phones autocorrect, you know, so check what it's autocorrecting to. Use Grammarly, you know. You can start typing something, and if it doesn't look like what you were supposed to be typing, go find out how to spell it. Siri, how do I spell blah 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 blah? You know, so utilize technology as well. Adrian?
I agree with what everyone said. I love how Dr. Renee started off by saying, you know, there is a time and a place. And I think yes, we're focusing on, you know, the kids being able to know how to speak when they're speaking. But even scientists, my goodness, some I'm sitting in some scientific talks and it's like completely over my head because they're using all of these terminologies. And, you know, I might not know much about that specific field of science, and so they're talking and most of the audience can't even understand what they're saying. So know who you're talking to. During the pandemic, I think there was an FDA report about one of the vaccines, maybe vaccine safety or something like that. I think it was like a 50 or 60 page report. And I had commented on social media, you know, people were you know, talking about the vaccine and, you know, like it was safe and effective. These are like public health professionals and scientists saying it's safe and you should know. And so I was saying, I wish that the information had been communicated in a way so that the public would be able to digest it. And scientists, I believe the person was a doctor, responded to me saying, well, all they have to do is look at this 50-page report. And I'm like, ma'am, who's going to look at that 50-page report? And if they do look at it, who's going to understand it? You know, so you have to know your audience no matter what. When you become a scientist, you're still going to have to know your audience. So know who you're talking to and just be able to make the necessary adjustments.
Love it. I think that goes back to what Dr. Renee said earlier. How impactful is your work if nobody is able to talk about it? Because you didn't put it in layman's terms. When I was in special education, I always made it a point to over explain the IEP to parents, to whoever was sitting at the table, I'm going to give you the terminology. I'm not going to use acronyms. Let me tell you exactly what this is and then what it does or what it's for, because when you talk over people's heads, you lose them. And if you want them to be interested, invested in what you're saying, you got to give it to them in a way that they understand. And you can still be academic and scholarly in that way also. So you don't have to lose the essence of your academic prowess or whatever to help people understand what you're talking about. There's a way. So just be mindful of your words. You can have dollar words, 50-cent words, and still not lose your audience. I love that. All right, we have come to an hour. This has been a really good conversation. Thank you, ladies, so much. I want to give you all a final word. If you have a final word to share with the audience, please feel free to do so. And it could be on anything. How would you encourage people going into STEM? Whatever you want. So just take a moment to give a final word. And if anyone would like to contact you and you feel comfortable, if you have a way to be contacted about your profession, I'll throw it in the chat, or you can send it to me afterwards and I'll make sure that we get it shared. And I want to say thank you to everyone who is viewing. That was my dad that said, Daddy's watching. Hey, Daddy. My dad is watching. Your mom's watching, Dr. Renee. I think I saw Dr. Paula's child walk through the background at one point. So we got a lot of people watching. Please share. Please, 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 everyone who's watching, hit the share button. Share with your friends, your families, especially those who have girls who are interested in any STEM profession. So Dr. Renee, we can start with you. If you have a final word, go ahead. Then we'll go Zaria, Dr. Adrian, and then Dr. Paula.
So I'll just be really brief, just continue encouraging your children to follow their passions, follow their dreams. If it's an area, if it's STEM, follow in this area of STEM. Really instill those technical skills, or those skills rather, that we talked about today. A lot of them were soft skills that your child would need in order to be successful in this career. And we do need more people that look like us in areas of STEM, because we need more people at the seat of the table to be impactful in this space.
One thing I can say for any college students or younger students is to definitely use your resources as well as your peers. There's many, like, for example, your school might have a career center. If you are looking for it, definitely get into an internship so you can get hands-on into the field. And that career center can also get you a job after graduation. So I definitely say your peers, resources, and any staff that you know or anyone that else you know.
I always say you do not have to see it to be it. So just because you don't see someone who looks like you doing something that you want to do doesn't mean that you can't do it. And a lot of times we fall, especially in our communities, we fall for the lie that science or STEM is like this unreachable thing. No, you can do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. But I would say seek out those people who are going to support you. If you tell somebody what your goal is, what your dream is, and you find someone who's saying that they're willing to help you, stick with that person. And anyone who's discouraging you, block them out.
Yeah, for me, I think we need more people to stay in academia. A lot of us exit academia and go into industry. And there's a concept called the leaky pipeline, and it addresses like why people of color just kind of, after they get their degrees, they kind of just fall out of academia, because academia is a tough, it's a beast. But we do need more people to stay in, because we need more people to keep the door open and be able to pave the path for others to come along. And so I would just really encourage, people who are listening here to desire that, to stay in academia, to be a part of the change, to create. We need more people in senior leadership in academia. We need more scientists, we need more professors, and we need to be there so that we can begin to change the narrative and to begin to influence how the science is impacting us, because it does impact us, as you've heard from everyone here. So it does have an impact on us and our community. And so we need to be there. It's not easy, but some of us have to stay in. And so just to be that champion to stay in.
I love it. This has been very informative. I feel so honored. I love this. I don't think I've ever personally met a Black scientist. So this is a new thing for me. So thank you all so much. And to see the realms that you all work in, microbiology, molecular biology, immunology, virology, all the ologies, right? I love it. And Zaria, I wish you all the best. I think you're a junior now, right? So we all, I'm sure we all wish you the best in your studies. You know, finish strong. Send me an invite to graduation next year, whenever it is. And if I can, I will surely be there. Yourself also, soon to be Dr. Adrienne Gladden Young. Let us know, hopefully in December, how things are going. We'll be cheering you on. If I get an invite and I can come, I will be there. Dr. Renee, I wish you the best in your continued work and all that you do in Canada. Yourself also, Dr. Paula. If you all have any, is there a way to contact you? Maybe LinkedIn or email or anything. If you have it and you want to share, feel free. If not, that will be the end of our night.
Yeah, I'm unreachable on LinkedIn and Instagram and Blue Sky as Sister in Science. So you can look me up. I'm very approachable.
Say it again for me.
Sister in Science, so SIT.
SIS.
SISTA in science. And I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. And or you can just search up Paula John, you know, UBC, Paula John Vancouver, and I'll come up somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm happy to chat, follow up.
Anyone else?
I'm on LinkedIn, so it's just my name, Dr. Renee Robinson.
Okay.
I'm also on LinkedIn, Adrienne Gladden Young, or all social media. If you look on Tufts University Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences, my profile is there and my email address is there as well.
I'm also on LinkedIn, but you can give my personal email because I don't really receive outsider email through my school, which is
Sure.
Zaria0717@gmail.com.
And be mindful of your emails also. You can't be like, Miss Juicy, such and such at Gmail on your resume. Don't do that. So have a professional. That's part of that communication that we talked about. All right. I think I have everything right. If not, I can correct it a little bit later. I don't want to hold you all later than I told you I would, but thank you all so much for joining us. Everyone who is viewing, please make sure you share it. We'll have to get them back soon just to hear, I guess, updates with the work and projects that they have going on because I'm like super interested. I love it. So I'm like a low key science geek. That didn't go in the direction of science, but it's okay. I live vicariously through you all. So thank you. And with that, I just want you all to have a great night and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.